So as we've been doing our video typing, kind of getting to know a lot of people, we're finding that like stuff like personality disorders are much more common than we all thought. There is no such thing as a normal person.
I know.
It's like the 1950s. There is a spectrum, and we're really finding that you can be normal within your little species.
Yeah, that's
if
totally
you're an
what we're seeing.
ENTP, you could be a very normal ENTP.
Yeah.
And then even in the world of ENTPs, there's ones that are a little bit more crazy than others, depending on how you define crazy.
Yeah.
So bottom line, what we're finding is that what a lot of people have, the DSM-5 and all that, a lot of old, let's just call it 1940s classifications of personality disorders, there's not as many, from our opinion, there's not as many as you think.
I know, so many of them are just like, that sounds like function.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you're just very extroverted, you're just very introverted. No, you don't have a fucking disorder, you're fine. Right. For your crazy group, all of your group is that crazy, but you're normal of that crazy group, crazy defined by everyone else, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't go without saying that there is actually personality disorders.
Yeah, and that's kind of where you and I have been spending a lot of time. Like, okay, so what defines that? And obviously the DSM was like, okay, if it's disrupting your life to an extreme degree where your friends and family, you're not actually able to have a normal life or whatever, that makes sense. But now we're kind of going, okay, what part of it is where the chemicals are actually off? It's not, you're outside of your spectrum of your particular 512 type.
Right. And then from there, we are finding that certain personality disorders are absolutely clustering in certain personality types on the 512 spectrum.
Right.
So things like OCD, yes, it's going to be around more controlling types, around the IJs.
EPs too.
Insecurity or depression will cluster around certain types.
Yeah.
So one of them is this story of this guy that he goes around and teaches that he's a legitimate psychopath.
Right, he teaches that he's a legitimate psychopath.
He teaches, and basically yes. So it's a weird story that he was like working for some scientific setting where they were like testing psychopaths. They were measuring people's brains, giving them a Dario Nardi hat, this kind of thing where they're measuring, and they have a whole bunch of definitions and blah, blah, blah. And so they're sorting out people that are on a spectrum of psychopaths.
Crazy, not crazy.
Right,
crazy,
right.
not crazy.
So he's literally like going through the paperwork, and in the files was actually his brain mapping and his results, but he wasn't aware of it. He's like, wow, this person's clearly off the charts psychopathic nuts. And he's like sorting them out, and then like flips it over and has his name on it. And he's like, okay, so what this must be wrong.
Yeah. And
it turns out, no, that he really is an off the charts psychopath.
Okay.
Defined by psychology, right?
Okay.
So this is a story of a psychopath, a spectrum disorder characterized by callousness, antisocial behavior, superficial charm, narcissism, grandiosity, a sense of entitlement, poor impulse control, and lack of empathy or remorse, and won't even have the fucking slide in the screen. And I don't care.
So somebody with DI.
Yeah.
Or TI.
Yeah.
Lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Does
you
not
deal
have
with it.
Too much. Doesn't have enough FE.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just
like the way that's worded, right? They did not cry and emote with others. What is wrong with you?
Exactly. That's kind of how we're seeing it.
Yeah.
It's like somebody it sounds like in our language, it just sounds like somebody who is
empathy spectrum.
Yeah. On the non-FE side of the empathy spectrum.
Which is clearly us too, by the way.
That's right.
Psychopaths. Like, yeah I'm not good at it.
We've both had that term thrown at us over the years in a very serious tone by friends and family.
You're laughing at inappropriate things. Yeah.
Yeah, because let's see. High empathy, I'm be on this side of the curve. And that's the point. We're seeing that nobody lives in the middle.
Right.
There's a butt crack in the middle. You are a little on this side or a little on that side at best.
Yeah, you're a little too high or a little too low.
Not saying that there is legitimate, like, okay, if you're this guy, if you're number one out of 512, yeah.
Right, if something that should be sad that can't make you sad, there isn't anything that can make you sad. I don't know. Like if you really, really can't even raise an eyebrow or shed a tear.
Right.
You might want to work on that.
Unempathetic acts have found in every population on the planet. The key idea is that we all lie somewhere on the empathy spectrum. People said to be evil or cruel are simply at one extreme of the empathy spectrum. We can all be lined up along the spectrum of individual differences based on how much empathy we have.
Is this written by a decider?
I don't know. Somebody from the Trap book page. So we're seeing more that, yes, it does. You do think about things in a spectrum.
Yep.
Right. Anyway, so psychopath or whatever, masculinity, self above tribe, not demon feelings, something like that. Right. All right. So let me play the clip and just watch this for yourself. The key takeaway is ownership. Is responsibility.
All of it, for all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You flip over your card, it says you're a nut, fucking own it.
Yeah, right.
Don't worry about it.
So this is amazing. You're looking at scans of murderers, of schizophrenics, normal brain scans, PET scans, and your own brain scan, and you discover that in your own brain, it is the same kind of brain as a psychopath.
Yeah, it was like the worst case, because all those areas of the brain that I had decided, by looking at these, that were involved in, the psychopathic personality, I had all of them, and it was completely turned off, and it had to do with emotional regulation.
So you can actually see in a brain scan if somebody's a psychopath?
Not really. What you can see are changes that are consistent with traits. So I can look at different brain scans and say that person's got a language problem, that person's got a problem with their visual system or sense of space. So you can see traits.
And the
so
traits of a psychopath that are clear to you, that you think you have, are what?
Well, it's a very poor sense of morality, first of all. Like for me and for people who are psychopaths, they can have a sense of ethics, the rules of behavior. But actually the deep morality, what we consider morality, is not there.
So psychopath, I mean, do you have a sense of empathy?
I have a sense of what's called cognitive empathy.
So rationally,
I understand when somebody is in pain.
Okay.
But what I don't have so much of is emotional empathy. So I have what would be more like sympathy. I'm involved in a lot of charitable sorts of endeavors. I've always been. But actually connecting with somebody emotionally, it's tough to be close to me, to be married to me or be really close. It just is, because it's not there.
So is there a hopeful aspect to all of this, that having identified this, you can change behavior? Or what's the takeaway for you?
Well, the first thing, the knowledge, I found out I was completely wrong about the science, which was a bitter pill to swallow, because I thought everything was driven by genetics, biology, and I didn't think nurture had anything to do with it. Once I realized, because of the genes I have, that if you're brought up in a very nurturing environment, you can offset the biology.
So you may have genes for this, you may have these areas of the brains which aren't developed and stuff, but because of the way you were brought up, the foundation that your family gave you, you don't act out on these behaviors.
And we just found out in the past 2 years, some of these genes that were kind of warrior genes that put you at risk if you're abused early on, if you're treated with love and you're not abandoned or anything like that, it has the opposite effect. It kind of washes all the negatives away. So you still have some traits, but you don't have the full-blown psychopathy. So I think I was saved by a nurturing environment and a really loving extended family. My mother saw something early on, which she finally told me last year that something wasn't right. And
really? She identified that early on?
Yeah, she told me, started telling me things. Wow. Yeah, and it was really surprised, because she says, you never told anybody, because I was heading in a dark direction.
I also think what it takes to propel somebody into the public sphere, propel somebody to success, I mean, they are not normal impulses, I think. And I think a lot of them are psychopathic impulses.
If you have that grand vision, because psychopaths will have a grand vision, not all of them. Some are just lousy rats, but people have that grandiose narcissistic need, and they've got something to prove, and they've got something, they say, I'm going to save the world. That's part of it. It doesn't make you psychopathic, but it's one of the traits that fits into this puzzle of psychopathy.
It's really fascinating. Thank you so much for talking about it.
It feels very NT, having a harder time with the emotional side of stuff. Like, I don't have that naturally. It's very interesting that the parents would then fill in the gaps of the love, the nurturing. Like, yes, that's exactly what we're seeing. Like, okay, great. Default, you have these functions, right? You're going to have those parts naturally. Okay, great. You now can't move, you can't grow, you can't move forward. No, like that's the whole joy of all of this. Great, maybe default you have a thinker mind, and that's what you got default, and you don't know how to emote or emotionally connect to others, and that's what's naturally going to be hard for your brain. All of your chemical wiring are all having a hard time jumping over to the emotional side of reality.
Even if you have these personality disorders that are kind of stuck on a spectrum, and you have an upbringing that was horrible, because you don't have love and nurturing, so now you got 2 strikes out of 2 strikes. There's still one more. That is the conscious decision to kind of enter the world of Tony Robbins land. Where you're like, I'm going to start taking control of my life.
Right.
I got to re-raise myself. I got to restart over, and I got to start reprogramming and relearning myself at a whole new level.
Right.
And that is the self-growth stuff that does also work. It just takes time.
Yes.
The big thing though is like in our work, we're really wanting to kind of bring like lighten up. It's okay.
That's why we laugh.
You suck. I suck. Everybody sucks. You got a disorder. I got a disorder. We're all fucked. I got bad parents. You got bad parents. It's a big mess, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, together, let's start over, love each other, and work and grow and re-raise ourselves.
Yes, love it. This guy looks like a Furby. Dr. James is so cute. Anderson Cooper is, goddamn, I love people in the comments. It's so good. Yeah, thumbs up.